well, you sold me one. Anyway, Dr. Sorah Dubitsky, this mic is all yours.
Okay, so I don't have yeah, my mic is on. So can you hear me? My mic is on
You sound
and my
great.
video's on. So
Yep.
I'm okay because I've been wearing a headset lately and but it's in another room and I won't get it as long as you can hear me. And yeah, last night to be able to talk about nonviolent communication and A Course in Miracles and my book. It was a blessing. I hope I came across clear because we were clearly, because I was, mixing and matching, these different modalities. And one thing I want to start with is something that happened in my class. I teach this class right now remotely in sex education, human sexuality. And there's always, processes or activities, that we do. And I asked one of the questions they had to answer, the students had to answer, was what factors contribute or behaviors can contribute to having a long-lasting relationship. And there were no prompts, like, they had some resource material, but I didn't guide them in any way about, how to answer the question. And I have to stop for a second. I'm having some cat issues. But that's if you hear growling in the back or that's the cats. Um, so uh they had to answer this question about what these factors were. And it was so interesting because the first was communication. And the second one, though, was trust. Now, this is coming from, the Gen Z. And I thought that's so interesting because in my book, and that's really what I want to talk about a little bit. Um, what is trust? Because in my book, picture here, book. Um, I have 7 principles of intimacy. And the first one that I put into the book was trust. And the students haven't seen this trust. So I want to talk about what, and the course talks about, and that's where I got it from. This is not completely original. But in the course, the first characteristic of a teacher of God is trust. So, but there's kind of different levels. So the students had communication, trust, and a third one, respect, which I find really interesting. And I don't want to go into it, but in my thinking, respect is a given if you're in a relationship. Why would you be in a relationship with someone you don't respect? But to these Gen Z students, respect, honesty was another one, but what I wanted to focus on is this idea of trust. And what I write is trust is the foundation of any healthy relationship. Without trust, it can be difficult to feel truly close to someone. Building trust requires authenticity, transparency, consistent behavior over time. And many of us have scars from the past for having trusted and been hurt. So when the Course says trust, what's coming to me years ago, Saul Steinberg was the original printer of the Course. That's a story you could probably find somewhere. Um, but he started getting into the publishing business and he was publishing books from other authors. And all the authors had, course type material, meaning spiritual, meaning, inspired by A Course in Miracles. So there was one book, and I don't recall the title, but what the message was that because of through A Course in Miracles, we have to learn to trust. It's got that trust. What does that mean? So we trust, some of us have trusted and been hurt, like it says in my book. That's and we carry the scars of that. So when we're practicing the course and it says the first characteristic of a teacher of God is, I have a handy dandy book here, is trust. What are we trusting? Who are we trusting? Where are we? And what is trust? Why should I trust? And what occurred to me here, trust. This is the foundation on which their ability to fulfill their function rests. That's a teacher of God. Um, the surface traits of God's teachers are not at all alike. They do not look alike to the body's eyes. They come from vastly different backgrounds. Let's see. Not at here, nor at the beginning stages of functioning as teachers of God have they as yet acquired the deeper characteristics. And if you've read this, I mean, I heard Myrna say before that the uh, manual for teachers is her favorite book. Uh, okay. Cats. Um, so to bring it back to what I was saying, we to trust is really trusting ourselves. And to trust ourselves is to go to the part of ourselves that's connected to God. Susan always talks about God connection and go to God, and that's the source, and that's where the truth of who we are lies. And my example today has to do with cats. So I've had one cat for a while. I've had cats all my lives. Um, and I'm planning some trips. Myrna, I'm still maybe planning a trip to go to John's retreat, but I'm planning some trips and I didn't want to leave my cat alone, so I'm thinking of getting another cat. And then, so I've had this cat here and they're getting used to each other. And then I wanted to change and do something else, maybe bring in another cat. And what I kept feeling was, no, don't do that. I might have to get up and, okay, they're working it out. Um, I didn't want to do that, but at the same time, I didn't want to hurt the woman whose cat I was going to bring in, and the guilt came in. I know I don't know Jewish guilt; it's in the genes. um, the guilt came in, and and to go back inside. Oh, they're growling. To go back inside and just trust that, okay, what I'm feeling in my heart is don't bring in another cat or return one and check out another one. Don't do that. What I was feeling in my heart. So what does that have? And prayer. The first aspect of trust is prayer. Going to source. So I'm not trusting the situation. I'm not trusting people. Hey, they're working it out, like I said. I'm not trusting people, I'm not trusting the situation. I'm trusting that part of myself that is connected to source. And what trust does, I mean, the course talks about characteristics of the teacher of God who does trust. And I love, this idea of tolerance. Teachers of God are tolerant. And for someone like me who gets very impatient, I I want it now. I would to tolerate to being in an uncomfortable situation, to tolerate, well, that's the best place for you right now. Again, when I'm talking about trust, I'm not, and at one level, the level of my book, it sounds like I'm talking about trusting another person. But in the greater scheme of things, what I'm trusting is the part of me that is connected to Source, that's connected to God. And then that allows me to, or allows anyone to, I'm going to use these words, tolerate. Oh, they're fighting. To, tolerate situations. When my husband was getting frailer, there were times, um, I don't even talk about. There were times that were difficult. And I had to keep practicing that idea of trust that I would be guided. I would be guided to help him through this time. I would be guided to find the right doctors, if that's what he needed, that I would be guided because I was his complete caregiver. I don't like the word caretaker, caregiver for 3 or 4 years. And the trust had to be there. Also, the tolerance had to be there. Um, some of what the experiences were um, at any other time in my life, or maybe other people have gone through this, they were intolerable. And no, I don't want any part of this. I mean, I could see that as like a script. I don't want any part of this. But to trust is, and there were beautiful miracles. I won't, there were, um, like the right doctor showing up, the right people showing up. Oh, and I think, did we laugh about this? Um, the EMTs, yes, I think we did laugh about this. The EMTs showing up who were good looking. Didn't we did talk about that, didn't we, Lynn? That the EMTs, like they send in these beefy, looking guys who's, strong and,
I
you
think
know,
because
hmm?
I used to work the whenever there was an accident at work or something where or someone passed out or something like that, and we'd call the fire department, and then all the ladies would line up on the balcony.
Right, exactly. We talked about that. So, so that the idea of, trusting enabled me to tolerate what was going on, even if it, and, the rewards were things like that showing up. Um, Another characteristic of a teacher of God, gentleness. And again, I compare this to my 7 principles of intimacy. What I write about is that it's the second principle is authenticity. And what does that mean in course terms? To be authentic is to be our spiritual self, our spiritual identity. And to be authentic, I always think of alignment, and the course would probably call that honesty. I always think about alignment, and alignment being all our words, our thoughts, our words, our feelings, our actions, they're all in alignment with that deeper core self. That's what authenticity means to me, and that's what honesty means to me. Authenticity in what I write, authenticity is being true to your heart. Every thought, word, and deed is aligned. See, there's that word with the highest within you. When you are authentic, there is no fear. You allow others to see you naked. Kindness is an aspect of authenticity. When you're truly integrated, you are naturally kind. And I'm kind of doing like mixing and matching. So to be authentic is to be aligned again with that, and I'll use that word, with that higher self, spiritual self, the spirit that we are. And that's so interesting because we're really, I heard someone before talk about the ego. What is the ego? Um, as the Course sees it, the ego is a self identity that we have made up, and we don't even realize that we've made up. And I've talked about this in terms of cognitive psychology, where babies come in and there's like all this stimuli, and over time, the brain connections, uh, neuronal connections, um, start coming together through experience. So we build up ideas and beliefs based on experiences, and we build up ideas and beliefs of how the world is and what the world is and how the world treats us and what our place is in the world. And none of that's true in the sense of, who we really are. Ken Wapnick used to talk about this. So to be authentic is to kind of, scrape away all the things that we believe we are to get to this core that is where everything is aligned. In the Course, gentleness, let's see, I talked about vulnerability, and I was thinking about vulnerability this morning. Intimacy requires willingness to be vulnerable with your partner. This means sharing your thoughts, feelings, and fears in an open and honest way. Vulnerability is essential to transcendent, I talk about transcendent lovemaking. um, in order to trust, you need to be willing to be vulnerable. In lovemaking, being willing to be vulnerable allows you to open physically. There's a period missing. Okay. I don't want to know. um, so even forget about the sex part. To be vulnerable is to not hide, not lie, be the authentic self that you are. To be vulnerable is to be defenseless. There's a workbook lesson: in my defenselessness, my safety lies. Or if I defend myself, I'm attacked. To think in terms of vulnerability as strength, that you can't be vulnerable, vulnerability, you can't be hurt because of who you are. To be vulnerable is like to me to wear your heart on your sleeve. And to be the Christ self that the Course tells us to be. I think it was Susan talked before about innocence. Yeah, and it talks about there's a child within us that is completely innocent, and that's also being vulnerable. I remember I was teaching in Oregon, and it was not going well. And I don't even know why, except the message was don't teach in Oregon, but teaching in Oregon, same thing I do here, same, I've been teaching in Florida for years, but my reviews were horrible. my yeah, and I don't know why. And one student actually wanted me to drop dead. I mean, that's how bad it was. So I got a talking to from, one of the person, one of the teachers who was like, was who was in a supervisory capacity. They're playing, I think. Um, and he was kind of dressing me down. I mean, the reviews were so bad that I had to have a talking to. And all I could think of was, in my defenselessness, my safety lies. And my defense, that's all, that was my whole thought. And what does that have to do with vulnerability? Well, when you're vulnerable, that it's being defenseless. It's allowing, no, well, what defenses, that's the same word, but it's not, it's being fearless also. You allow, okay, I'm being vulnerable, I'm being open, and I still can't be hurt. So there's a difference between being vulnerable and being hurt. And that was that experience. Like, I didn't defend myself. Um, I think I taught one more term there, and then we wound up coming back to Florida. I mean, it was really a big lesson, like, no, you don't belong there. But that sense of, okay, I'm allowing myself to be vulnerable by not defending myself. And so we will move on then. Oh, communication. Yeah. That's another one of my principle of miracles, or principles of intimacy, communication. And we talked about, and it's right here in the book. Um, we talked about communication is expressing what you need without blame and defensiveness. And that's what I was trying to communicate last night. I hope I came across cogently or cohesively. Um, that nonviolent communication is a method for communicating, for communicating effectively. And I've spoken about it in my classes, and when we, as I said before, when I gave the students this poll about what behaviors are needed for long-term relationships. Communication was number one, but there's communication, and then there is communication, meaning there's communication and really effective communication. And that's what nonviolent communication is. It's effective communication. I think I heard Marshall Rosenberg say this, or it was neurolinguistic programming. Someone said that communication is something that's given and received. And that's so important because, we think, we're communicating because we're using words. Yeah, but whether or not, there was another neurolinguistic programming. The meaning of your communication is the results you get. The meaning of your communication is the results you get. So you could, give somebody this, you have this fabulous speech, or, the point you're making, and this is so important. And then, so you say that, but they get something completely different out of it. So your communication wasn't received. And if your communication isn't received, then it's really not communication. And I think that's, one of the most, like in A Course in Miracles, It doesn't use that word in communication, in the characteristics of a teacher of God. But I use it in the book as a characteristic of intimacy. You can't be intimate with someone unless you can communicate. And intimacy, I have it in other essays, and all intimacy is presence. I mean, that just seemed so obvious to me one day that if I'm fully present here and now with you, and meaning everything is aligned, I'm listening, I'm opening, I'm not thinking about what I have to cook for dinner, what I'm shooting, what the latest, I don't know, soap opera on TV. I'm just fully present here with you, engaged with you. Then we're communicating, we're trusting, and we're being intimate because to be fully present, there's no boundaries. There's relaxation. The message is, I'm here with you. And then I was talking about that to one of my gym friends, and she's a 92-year-old woman, and she's hot. I mean, tell you, she's this woman, she's got it together. And she bought a copy of my book. And what we were talking about intimacy and what is intimacy. And, she, agreed about being present, about being here and now with someone. And where you're not distracted. Oh, Steve, you're not distracted. You're not thinking of anyone else. Um, you're just here and now. So to summarize, what I am doing, I hope, is still connecting this idea of being a teacher of God. And to be a teacher of God is to, without using words, we don't go around saying, oh, hi, I'm a teacher of God. But we demonstrate, to teach is to demonstrate. We demonstrate being a teacher of God by our thinking, our actions, our behavior, our heart. And what I've been going through is, at the level of 3D reality, in this book, 7 Principles of Intimacy. And I was just talking about trust as the foundation of intimacy. You can't be intimate if you don't trust someone. And what I was saying before was that sometimes we've been scarred when we trusted. And that's because we were trusting in a person instead of the trust to ourselves. Um, and the trusting that part of us that it's connected to God. That's, and that not only creates intimacy, but that's what it means to be a teacher of God. That I'm willing to, I can be authentically who I am, which is pure love. And I have essays in the book that talk about that. Our identity is love. And, of course, the miracle says love created me like itself. Our reality is innocence. No matter whatever we've done can be forgiven and can be corrected. And in my principle, authenticity, and I was just talking about vulnerability and communication. And to be vulnerable is to, not only to be intimate, but also as a teacher of God, it's to, again, go be that part of ourselves that is connected to source, connected to God. I also hear an emotional connection. Course doesn't talk a lot about emotions other than love and fear, but two emotions. I have some course quotes. There are but two emotions, love and fear, and that's it. Fear and love, I have the quote, fear and love are the only emotions of which you're capable. Um, I have said you have but two emotions, love and fear. And to build, so if we're trusting to ourselves, we're being authentic, we're allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. So it's funny, in that poll I told my students, or I asked my students to complete, one of the things that came up that they said contributed to a long-term relationship was boundaries, setting boundaries. And again, this is like different levels, the courses on level two, and what I'm talking about level one, but I think it's reverse. What I'm talking about, it's kind of level two, and level one is what the course talks about, which is metaphysical reality. But when we are allowing ourselves to have that emotional connection, that's a byproduct of presence, which is what I was talking about before. To be fully with someone, is a byproduct, is what presence is. I gave a workshop, the beginning of March. And it was based on this idea of the seven principles of intimacy and what is intimacy. And I started the workshop with giving everyone some raisins to eat, and then guiding them through a process of eating the raisin. But as you're eating the raisin, being aware of what does it taste like? What sensations are you experiencing? That's the catwalk gets busy sometimes. Um, so sorry. It's you're eating the raisin. See, I wasn't fully present. I got distracted. So you're eating the raisin and just focus on the sensation, the taste. You can smell it first. You can look at the texture of it, engaging all the senses to eat this raisin. And I used that opening as a meditation, and I used it as an example of what it means to be fully present. Can I be fully present eating a raisin? Can I be fully present being with my friend? Can I be fully present just knowing what they're feeling? Um, I'm an intuitive, a lot of people are these days, as we open up and become more of who we are, the natural healing abilities, or the natural, I was talking about emotional connection. Um, the natural connection between us expands. So I was talking, one of the neighbors, and whenever she's going through a crisis, and in need of some kind of healing. And as an intuitive, I was able to, go beyond whatever boundaries she had, and feel what was going on. But that is just an example of what I mean by boundaries. We need in 3D world, yeah, we need some boundaries, but to be truly intimate is to drop boundaries. And what I was saying is, I'm trying to say is that when we're truly intimate, we feel each other. When I talk about emotional connection, it is kind of bypasses emotion, and we have connection. And maybe you've had that experience. Lynn, I'm sure you've had experiences where you feel somebody. And wasn't that used in the vernacular for a while? You're like, I feel you. You're just like, yeah, I feel you. That's what connection is. It's being able to feel what another person is feeling. And that's also empathy. You can, which is another one of my 7 principles of intimacy. Um, if I read this too closely, I'm going to find mistakes. However, um, so to drop boundaries. So let me summarize because it's starting to get a little bit late. To be a teacher of God is to trust. And what are we trusting? We're trusting the highest that's within us. And to be intimate with someone, I'm saying is to trust not them, but what you're trusting is yourself, that inner connection to spirit. That's where the real trust lies. And I mentioned before a book um, that said, one of Saul Steinberg's old books, we have to learn to trust. And because it's trust at a different level. So to be a teacher of God is to trust. To be truly intimate is to trust. To be truly intimate is to be vulnerable. And when we're vulnerable, I'm saying it's the same thing as being a teacher of God, because we're revealing our real self, our innocent self, our loving self. Um, there's no defenses. There don't have to be defenses. And without defenses, then we're fully present with someone. And I mentioned my 92-year-old friend who gets it. Yeah, to be intimate is to be fully present. And then I have a couple of other, and I spoke about communication. And communication, which the course, and I'm going to have to do a search. I'm sure it talks about communication somewhere. Um, but to communicate is to not only talk, it's not only to give, but it's also receiving, and knowing whatever it is that you're communicating is received. And it's not misunderstood. And so we have trust, we have vulnerability, to be authentic. And these are my 7 principles. To be authentic is to being true to your heart. Every thought, word, and deed is aligned. And that what I'm calling authenticity is what A Course in Miracles calls honesty. Everything is in alignment. So you're coming from this uh, deeper place within you. It's not surface. And I mentioned it's not beliefs about who we are, which is what the ego is. It's the actual demonstration of who we are as spiritual beings. So with that, I will close. It's just been you and me, Lena, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate you for last night, like I said, I hope I was being clear. You said a couple people bought the books. I'm gonna sit in on that group because I really love Marshall Rosenberg and I love nonviolent communication. And I think I said this last night, it saved me multiple times in my relationship with Larry, my husband, and my sister of blessed memory. Anyway, but I think I'll end there. And much love. Thank you, God. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Anyone who's listening, um, tuning in. I appreciate this time to share. And wish me well with my cat exercise now.
My cats are, I have 7 cats.
Oh
And
my God.
they for the most part they get along really well. So they love each other and have friendly times with each other and they play with each other and they fight with each other and I just don't get involved. It's cat politics. That's their deal. I don't know anything about it. So
It's yeah, Arlo's been alone for 2 years and I had this thought to get him a companion. So anyway, it's been, another opportunity to trust and let the guidance take over and
yeah.
uh we'll see. But seven, oh my God, you have a house, I'm assuming.
Oh gosh, yes. We have
Yeah.
that, but we foster a whole feral cat colony. So we're just, it's cat city here. And guess what? I'm deathly allergic to cats.
Oh
So
no.
it's just that's why I'm always congested, is because I have high allergies to cats. But
Oh my God. So you're on Benadryl or you live on that stuff?
oh, I'm not, I'm on lots worse stuff than that. So, anyway, thank you so much, Sora. And I just wanted to say, yes, communication. Jesus tells us that the body is when used correctly, is a communication device. The
That's
Holy
right.
is the communication device between our Father and ourselves. Communication is very important. In fact, our creations are communication, according to the course. So there's a lot of stuff about communication in there. And
Yeah, I'll do like I'll do some research. I haven't really looked at that in a long time, but yeah, it's important. And then of course, nonviolent communication make sure in the process, make sure that you really are communicating. And like I was saying last night, I love the aspect of it that gets to need, core needs.
yes, exactly, exactly.
And that I thought was brilliant.